Put your red shirt on and a brown coat too. Everybody joining the crew. We got just one ring, let we rule them all. Hope would remember your towel. Get your Uru feathers and your needler guns. A sonic screwdriver or a sword +1. Use Valerian steel if it will get you to come. To the big tank. To the big tank. The Rocky Mountain Big Tank.
Hi, I'm Guy,
Hi, I'm Troy,
and this is Geek Tank.
your new and improved lemon scented podcast.
So we're attempting to run out of, well, there we go. See, and that worked because now we've got Brent. Although I've got the icon logo on top of it, which maybe I could turn that away.
I noticed our format's all different now too.
Yeah, but now you can read it on screen, which was actually one of the things that I really liked about Restream. We're using Restream, which means that it's not going to YouTube and it's not going to any of the other locations just yet because I haven't figured out how to do those. So we'll get that squared away shortly. Makes it a lot easier.
One drawback to that I can foresee.
Dustin's here too.
Is we can't censor anyone.
Well, you can.
Well, no, I mean if we're live.
Yeah, well, we are live, and
right.
I mean, like I could delete it, but still, yeah, it can't censor anybody. But I kind of like the interaction better.
Can you do it like a ticker board on the bottom, like the way the news does?
Nah. I mean, I can turn it off. We can go over here and then just do that. It goes away. But
you can't raise us up and do that.
No. I've never actually.
Yeah, I guess the benefit to that is like if somehow someone is on something other than Facebook, then these people on Facebook would see YouTube comments, which they normally wouldn't. I could see how that would be an advantage.
Yep. So, I mean, this is the big advantage is that once we get all of the other parts in here, as we start getting people in from our Twitch channel and stuff like that, you're right. Everybody can see everybody.
Yeah,
which is useful.
To back to second Brent's comment, all of us miss Chelsea and Emily. Emily had like tons of school stuff happen, and then particularly in a situation where the pandemic would be very bad for her if she caught COVID, so she had to like stop socializing as much. But she's I don't know when she graduates or what that situation is. Last I saw, this was a few months ago, she and Chelsea did manage to go to one of the BTS things, so I'm not sure.
I think so Brent's commenting on Dustin and Hexacon, so we should probably alert and say that indeed Hexacon has been canceled for this year and moved to next year, and we won't be there. We were going to be there, but we're not going to, obviously, because now if we were there, we'd just be sitting in an empty room staring at each other. And we've done that now, and that wasn't as fun as they said it would be.
Yeah, it's more fun to go sit in a non-empty room and stare at each other.
And stare at each other. That's a much better thing for us to do. So that works. I'm also noticing a couple of things, like it fired off to my Discord, it looks like over there, because that's that bottom one, says good morning, grab your coffee. That's to my Discord. So we've got to figure out how to unfire it off to my Discord.
Right. You need to have a different setting so it doesn't go there.
Yeah. So
we do have a Geek Tank Discord, actually.
We do. We have a Geek Tank Discord, but it needs to go to it needs to go to the motor pool on our Discord and not to where on my side where I have
not to the Fox pool.
Right. It's not called the Fox pool.
Okay. And that's the copyright infringement Deadpool.
Right. It's the Deadpool. That's where it goes. Yeah, we just have to configure the accounts correctly. But if we do this will save us some money from Geek Tank, because one of the things we are doing is I'm already paying for this for my show. So
so then we don't have to have StreamYard running as well.
Yeah, StreamYard's expensive, and we were getting shorter and shorter on money. So,
yep,
which makes sense. Everybody's getting shorter and shorter on money. So, Dustin is here. Dustin, we have to talk at some point in time because I have this radio transmitting microphone set here, which is yours, and it's been sitting here. And I know you gave it to Geek Tank to be used, but then we went into pandemic and we haven't used it. So it's like,
yeah.
So I don't know if you need it back or if something, but it's sitting right here. I'm looking right at it. It hasn't even come out of its box. So
We
it's
used
just
it. We used it 2 weeks
shelf.
ago, didn't we? 2-3 weeks ago. Was that the thing we used a few weeks ago?
Nope.
Okay, we used something else a few weeks ago.
Yep, that's my new Olivia.
Okay.
I use that for broadcasting whenever the pandemic ends and Pepper and I can actually go to a Starbucks and broadcast from a Starbucks and draw.
Yeah.
Which is a battle plan. We just don't know when that's ever going to occur.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say, but there's speculation that the spike will peak in a couple of weeks and then start dropping.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And we'll get to the other side of it and things will start getting better. And that'll be good.
Yeah, it makes sense that it's rampaging because people got together for Christmas and people got together for New Year's Eve. So there's just been an increased amount of vectors out there. And so, of course, it's going to spread.
Right. Dustin, at your leisure, anytime's good. It's not taking up space. It's not bothering me. But we're not using it, obviously, because of COVID, and you might use it. So you can leave it with me or you can take it back at your leisure anytime. Anything's fine.
I don't think it could transmit from my place to your place. So it'd be kind of silly for us to
try
to do the situation.
Well, like I said, he gave it to us before pandemic.
Right.
Rightfully thinking that we could use it.
Yeah, to be useful.
Then pandemic. So what do you do?
Yep.
So
speaking of Hexacon, I actually, one of our sponsors, Kieran Games, I've getting some miniatures from him because for the D&D game that I run, that guy is in, as a gift, I wanted to get a miniature for each player's character and paint it because I'm decently skilled at painting miniatures in my.
No, you're not. You suck.
I know. I just dunk it in paint.
There you go. Like different layers. You dunk it in white, then you dunk it in red, but unlike different layers, it's like
it's somehow so meticulous it actually looks like somebody painted it.
Right.
But he actually had some of the miniatures that I'm after, so I was going to meet up with him at Hexacon. But now we have to do one of our shady parking lot deals.
I keep thinking it's so funny how we always end up shadily in parking lots trading miniatures and
buying miniatures. Yeah, do the looking over our shoulders.
Yeah, making sure the cops don't see us.
Chris needs to make a trench coat liner with like a bunch
of
minis in it, and then like with minis on the other side. Hey kid, want to buy a plastic ship?
The problem is every time he does that, I'm like, I need that plastic ship. I'm sorry, I need that.
First one's free.
Yeah. Oh, he gave me dolphins for free, so that I can make a whole bunch of, a whole
Federation
bunch of Starfleet officers out of Cetacean Ops.
So I'm wondering. I saw a thing go out about Gen Con and ReaperCon. ReaperCon's the miniatures, Reaper miniatures, and Gen Con's the giant gaming convention that happens out there in Chicago or Cincinnati, Indiana. There it is, Indiana. It's in Indiana. But they're more in the middle of the year. So I'm wondering, well, like ReaperCon's coming up in like a few months, and then I believe Gen Con's right after that, like sometime in June or July. Gen Con's sometime in June or July. So I'm wondering how close they're going to get to go time,
right?
Before they, because now it's reasonable that they would keep planning to have a convention because it's far enough away that things could turn around.
Right. Well, and that's I'm kind of wondering about that because I'm supposed to table at Wicked West Con, which is April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And it's a little Comic Con between here and Fort Collins. And their first year was 2020. And so they had to postpone it. And so this is, I bought a table for that in 2019. I'm not prepped for tabling yet. I've been kind of trying to figure out what to do. I'm not ready to table. And so I wouldn't have been ready to table at Hexacon. I was kind of glad that we were going into Hexacon
as media
because I wasn't ready to table at Hexacon anymore. I'm just out of commission. Like everything's out of whack. And so but I can't not table. That seems ridiculous. So I'm going to kind of get back up onto Genghis Khan is in February, is what Brent's
saying. They I contacted them through their media thing, and I have not heard back from them, so I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm well, Genghis Khan has like we've gotten really good response from Hexacon, which by the way, Dustin, we got really good response from Hexacon from whoever was in charge of press, and she was contacting us and we were in communication, and right up until the moment when they obviously changed pattern on us. So on them. So I'm totally happy with the way that worked. Lots of love to the Hexacon team.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, they were offering all kinds of stuff that we didn't need.
They were like, do you need internet? Do you want a table? Do you need a room? And we're like, wow, what would we do with that?
Yeah.
So we were like, do you want us to live game? Because we could do that. We could live game. It's like, what do you want us to do? So it was kind of fun. We were in the middle of that discussion when you guys went south on that, and that's kind of a bummer.
Can we get live feed from those GoPros?
Not from the GoPros.
Oh, okay.
But we can get live feed from Olivia. That's the thing, is that's what Olivia is designed for. So
I meant for each of us to have our own
GoPro stuck on our head, because that wouldn't make people sick.
No,
on camera.
Well, I meant sitting at a table playing a game, so they could see our cards and stuff. So
yeah, I still think you should probably mount it.
Okay.
Because otherwise it'd be cards, and then the ceiling, and then the cards, and then this girl that walked by, and then a dog, and then a squirrel, and we'd be all over the place.
So yeah, Genghis is in February 24th, so they've got a bit of wiggle room right now for things to calm down enough for them to go into it. Oh gosh, what convention was it? It may be Gen Con, but I feel like there was a convention that's already stated that they were going to require proof of vaccine as well as continual mask wearing. So I'm wondering, which I understand, and I
totally get that too.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily.
Even I think the biggest problem that I have with any of that is that people get kind of caught up on it, and I feel like that's kind of they shouldn't. It's like it's a business. It's like any business. Conventions are businesses.
Yeah, because they have to weigh the options of how much business are we going to lose if we put in a policy that's going to upset a few people versus canceling the entire convention, because versus getting sued for having the convention with no precautions and people getting sick and us being to blame. So that's the situation.
Well, we have that problem all the time, because NYE, we couldn't back out of NYE. And so there was no force majeure of that, so there was no backing down on that. So we had to keep going, and it does make you kind of wonder.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned the Druids and Dragons, which I think is kind of like if I remember correctly, like a pseudo camping game,
like a D&D
LARPish kind of thing. But there's cabins, which is what was told to me when I said I'm not really into camping. So
yeah, camping for me is Howard Johnson's.
Yeah, July in nature. The woods is the last place I really want to be.
It's where the bugs are. I'm not going.
That's their home.
That's their home.
I stay out of their home. They stay out of my home. That's the agreement we
have. A deal. We have a deal we're working on. Anyway. So okay.
So yeah, I'm buying some plastic miniatures.
TLDR.
Yeah.
Kieran Kieran Games.
Kieran
We're
Games.
buying plastic miniatures from Kieran Games.
Yes.
That's the TLDR on this one. I'm still working on printing my mini so that you can paint it. Just can't
no
paint
LARPing. Just can't. Yeah, you
covered
have to
pavilion with bathrooms.
all LARPing is unofficial. So it's all in your
I was
head.
going to say, some of our D&D games kind of gets LARPish in and of itself.
Yeah, well,
So there's a little
we've got players who really like the role playing part of the role playing aspect of the game, and which I appreciate because it adds to the storytelling.
I thought this last game that we were playing, I finally got to Zorch Alex. Alex usually hits all of us with, was that in character or was that out of character? He likes to be really big on, are you being in character or not? And my character starts threatening to eat goblins. And he's like, are we really going to just hang out here and do this? And I'm like, you could ask her not to eat the goblins. I mean, like, that's her character. She eats goblins. So that's what she does. Tell her they're sentient creatures and you're not supposed to eat them because she doesn't understand that. She knows it intellectually, but not emotionally. She has to think about these things. Take some processing time. She does not have a high intelligence score. Yeah, but I thought it was funny because he's usually on, and then he was like out of character, kind of getting cranky with me for
I don't
stalling the group.
I don't know if it's out of character, and I'm not sure.
No, I mean he was out. You can tell when he's in character because he uses an accent.
Okay, well,
that's what I mean. Like he uses his accent to indicate that he's in character, and he wasn't. He was just grumping at me for stalling the game. And I'm like,
look, I didn't pick up on that at all. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting. That's something we could talk about if you wanted to.
I was thinking of a comparison, a real world comparison of goblin eating, of like if you go back to 1980, there was a lot of bullying that happened to people that were vegetarians, and heck, don't even attempt to go into the land of veganism,
right?
Back in the 1980s, but because I remember being in the category of just slightly to the wrong side of the bullying without actually bullying, because being raised in the South, everything has to have meat with it. Right. It's not a meal without something dying for the purpose of you eating it. That's just how you're raised in that aspect. And
sure,
almost every vegetable has some kind of diced up meat thrown into the vegetable to make it taste better and not like a vegetable. And a bucket of butter.
And some Crisco.
Yep. But a really awesomely talented improv friend of mine, when I met her, was like the first that I know of out of the closet vegetarian. I guess you could say that. So, and I remember really being more educated in the concept of what vegetarianism was, and being able to break that pattern of the brainwashing of everybody has to eat meat. I even tried it, but I failed. I made it slightly more than a month just to see if I could do it.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah,
but yeah, it's just
and I mean, to be in that vein, that's definitely something that occurs between my wife and me, because she was much more. She had entire meals that were vegetarian.
Right.
She's not anti-meat. She's not a vegetarian per se. It's just that was a Spartan thing in her family. They didn't do meat that often, and so. Marrying me, and we have the same problem as you, because I'm from the South as well. So everything has to have meat.
Right.
And she's really good about trying to find a meat to go with the meals at all times, so that I don't feel like I just grazed. Because that is sort of a problem I have, is I feel like if I didn't have any meat, I just snacked. I just grazed. I didn't actually eat anything. And so I have a problem with that. And it's a mentality issue.
Yeah. Well, as my mom,
your mom
would say, she'd eat a salad and then she'd say, "Well, I need to get some real food."
Right.
I'm like, but that was real. That wasn't imaginary. You actually ate food. That was real food. But it doesn't tick that box of food apparently for Southern mentality.
Right. It's like cheaty. Yeah. It's like, okay, but that's worse, right? That's worse.
Yeah. Right? But I'm thinking now, because we went from the 80s to now, now it's actually There's a decent number of fast food places out there that try to cater. We've got the meat, Impossible Meat or Impossible Burger stuff. So if we took someone who was a vegan now and transported them back to 1950, and they were seeing that they had no options, that'd be like the reverse of now. Or let me put it this way: if we take somebody from 1950 and from Texas and transport them to now 2022 Boulder, they'd be just trying to eat cows and everything, and it's still part of our society, but I am looking at it as like Ivy being one of those things of like, she's from a society where if it's not your same species, it's open game.
It's open game, yeah.
And because her masters ate humans.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, it's and I like I'm trying to make her less irritating and more different.
Well, she's got to grow. She's in a new world. She's going to become.
She's totally like not sure how to deal with this new world. You're right.
Yeah, because it's not that she's stupid. She just doesn't have the tools, and so she's going to be collecting those tools as she goes along.
Right.
It's like she knows not to eat coins now.
Right. She learned that.
She learned that the hard way.
But she got paid well for it.
And I love that. I love that in that it created a chain of characters regurgitating.
Right. A chain of, we had the vomit chain going for a while.
Yeah, they basically gave so Ivy's a tiefling from the Netherdark. Never's been out of the Netherdark, and is now not in the Netherdark and in the if I'm pronouncing it right, Faerun plane, and decided to start eating some coins. One of the other characters whips up an ipecac and gives it to her because the concern that she's going to die from having all these coins in her stomach. Ipecac makes its roll, and Ivy starts getting the coins out of her system. So I have the player with her make a Constitution roll to not get sick watching that, and they crit failed, so they start getting sick. And so then I had NPCs around them start making rolls, and it was completely unexpected situation in the role playing game. As you said, you're gonna have multiple characters and NPCs just throwing up all night. I'm like, no, that's not D&D.
It was a particularly humorous scene. So just so we're aware, in the plane that she came from, the currency was blood. And so she didn't understand what these little metal discs were that they kept giving her. She's a bard. So she's singing songs in the tavern, and they're giving her these little metal discs. So she assumes it must be food.
Yeah.
And so because she doesn't know, so she eats them because she doesn't know that she's not supposed to. So
and of course the NPCs that are giving them coins is like, wow, this tiefling's eating these coins. Give her more coins. Let's see how many coins she can eat. Yeah, toss a coin to your tiefling.
Right. So it was toss a coin to your tiefling, and she was eating them because she didn't understand that she was part of the entertainment. Like, she thought she was just singing well and stuff, so they were giving her food. And so
the coin eating devil, that's right. That's the nickname that's the name that your character now has a reputation for, at least in that one tavern.
Right. Right.
So that's fun game.
It was. I just don't want her to be so irritating because, like, they are still doing somebody has to watch her so that she doesn't wander off like a child. And I'm like, well, though that's true, she's not that stupid. She actually is entertained. She's a tourist. So
there were a couple of games you weren't at, and it was easier to have her as an NPC wander off. So that way I didn't have to justify her being a target in combat.
That makes sense.
So
we'll just have to worry about that. She's a tourist. We should play her like a tourist.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you're in America and you're a tourist and you don't realize that, I don't know, something. I
remember being a teenager in Europe and I'm like, why is there no ice in this drink?
Right. Weird things like that. Like, why is there ice in drinks? Like it should be more like that. Or, you don't know what the yellow stripe means at the train station, stuff like that. I mean, obviously, if you're Japanese, you know what the yellow stripe is at the train station because it's exactly the same as the yellow stripe at the train stations in Japan. What I find interesting, speaking of that, and because we can be all over the place.
Absolutely.
Apparently today it's a potpourri episode, so we don't know what the heck we're talking about.
Well, we had negative minutes to prepare.
We really did. So yeah, right. Tipping is hysterical in Japan,
It
because if you
is.
tip anybody in Japan, they run after you to give you your money back.
Because they think you made a mathematical error.
Right. They think it's really funny.
Yeah, and in Germany, they call it Trinkgeld, which is drinking money. So you
Right.
usually round up the coinage.
Right.
And it's just so they don't have to mess with coins. But it's not expected. They're not
Right.
mad at you. They're not going to starve to death or have trouble paying for a hospital bill if you don't tip them, like here in America. You won't make rent if you don't get tipped in America.
So I was noticing some things. I wanted to kind of bring up we were talking about the yellow stripe.
Yellow stripe.
The yellow stripe is a thing that I saw in Japan when I was in Japan. You stay behind the yellow line when the trains come, because the trains come in really fast and you don't want to get sucked into the train when it comes in. And also, sadly, there's a lot of suicide in Japan. And so they keep an eye on the yellow stripe. And if you cross the yellow stripe, people watch you and then pull, because you might be jumping in front of the train to commit suicide. So they'll grab you and pull you back. And that's just part of the culture. I've noticed yellow stripes here now in America. Now, we don't have a culture of trains, so I'm not 100% sure if the yellow stripes existed in the 60s or whatever. But I'm noticing now that we have the trains and we have light rail, we have that yellow stripe as well. And I think that's interesting. But I was noticing things that we borrow from other countries have been coming back into our society. I feel like during the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even somewhat into the 90s, America was an export only when it came to culture. And I'm noticing a flip now, and parts of other cultures are starting to come back in. Like, I'm noticing ambulances now have the reflective stripes that I first saw in the UK in 1999, 1998, or 1999. Those the vertical, or I guess not vertical, but they're slanted stripes that are reflective, which is a brilliant idea. But I had seen those for so long in the UK and in France and in Belgium and Germany, kind of like spreading across the EU in the 90s, that when I see them now, my brain still says, we're in Europe. My brain keeps triggering to Europe because that's a symbol of Europe in my head, is, emergency vehicles with the stripes, which is funny because we didn't have those until recently, but I'm noticing we do now. Even the fire trucks now have the stripes on them, which I think is cool. Makes them higher visibility, makes them easier to see, anything that'll help. Because emergency vehicles, I always feel really bad. I mean, like cops and firefighters and EMTs, they're always in the middle of a road or in the middle of something, trying to do something, and it's like so difficult to, I just feel so bad for those guys because they always get hit and they're always getting run over. And
it's another one of those things that would be interesting when we go to all automated vehicles, that vehicles will just know before the driver even hears the siren.
Right.
Because they'll all be connected and they'll be like, oh, there's an emergency vehicle coming up. Better pull over.
Right. Well, and the cool part about all of those automated things is once we hit a certain level, there will be a logic to it that can happen at a centralized location. Like an accident has occurred at, First and Main, then they dispatch, I'm just making up, there's always a First and Main in every city. I'm not necessarily being, they dispatch the fire truck from, 32nd and, I guess not Main,
wherever.
Second, I don't know, whatever. But they dispatch it, and the computer can then, can see where the route is and clear the roads, so to speak. Like call all of the vehicles that are on those roads and have them get out of the way or pull over whenever the emergency vehicle gets up there. I think that it won't be long before we'll have some kind of modified monitor in our vehicles that will beep to say that there's an emergency vehicle behind you. Because I mean, I when I was a kid, I turned the radio up so loud that I couldn't hear a fire truck behind me. I don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, back in the day, my cars were so loud that I couldn't. But I mean, when I was in high school, I was a gearhead, so my cars were stock. They were
Cut them
so
off so that way
yeah.
it's
They were not they weren't standard. Well, they were all standard, but anyway, they were fast. And I actually personally liked quieter cars, but there were all stock. That's why I do the thing stock. They weren't stock. But I mean, I like the quieter cars, and usually my cars just had turbos or superchargers, so they were quiet and they didn't make the noise. But there were a lot of cars in our group and the people who were around us, and V8s with double Holly 4 barrels on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, you turn that thing on and everybody knew it would make your chest go as it ran, sort of thing. So yeah, you can't hear anything with those vehicles.
That's an interesting different. We find a lot of similarities between us in our pasts, but that's a huge difference. Is I had zero interest in cars other than as transportation, and in fact, I wanted a crappy car because I looked at it as, if I crash or something happens, I don't care about this.
Right.
There were cars that I recognized as going, wow, that's a really beautiful car, and because of the video game Spy Hunter is why I ended up being kind of attracted to Porsches.
Right.
I know some people call them Porsches. They or Porsche. I don't. It's a kind of an argument as whether it's Porsches or Porsche or something like that. But it looks like the Spy Hunter car. It didn't matter to me any what's the engine or does it do this or that. But we would both prefer manuals. It's just I'm in a situation where I really need to keep all my cars automatic so they're useful for the rest of the family.
The louder the motorcycle mentality.
The louder the better. The Harley Davidson group.
And you're not wrong. I think it is just it's a moment, I think, that had changed between the two of us, because really the truth is I got into cars because of Aaron, my buddy Aaron Holdaway. And I got into it was just one of those things. He was into cars, he had cars, and I was 17 or 16, and I was into cars because it was freedom. And he was like, well, for the first car that I got was $100. I paid $100 for it. And it was, it was smoking, and it was really, it had an automatic transmission. It had a 2-speed automatic in it. So it was in lousy shape. It was falling apart, but I paid $100 for it. Mm-hmm. So the first thing Aaron did was he pulled the engine out, put it on an engine stand, and then made me take it apart and put it back together. And that was fascinating. And so since we did that, we kind of upgraded it and made it better.
Your dad weren't into vehicles.
Yeah. And so from that point, such. And that's what got me in, but it wasn't necessarily, it didn't stick, because clearly as soon as I got out of high school,
you're like, bye.
It's like, yeah, now I don't want to get anywhere near popping the hood on my car.
I'm using all this valuable brain space on how to take apart engines that I could be using to remember episode numbers and secondary actors in Star Trek.
Right. I'm wasting a ton of Star Trek space. That's right. Valuable Star Trek space.
Yep. So just click and drag it to the trash bin.
Right. So, yeah. But yeah, it is kind of funny because there have been moments where, I was writing with Nate and, of Geekway Homes, and we were writing back, and he was having problems with his car. And I said, and he was like, I think it was stalling at lights. And he's like, I think the primary onboard computational machine was failing. And I said, no, that's your torque converter in your automatic transmission. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, you've got a problem with the torque converter. It's your transmission. And then like 2 days later, he texts me and he's like, oh my God, you were correct. They pulled it apart and it was the torque converter. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, like, and it's weird because people don't think of me as a gearhead. You know, they don't think that that's something I know, but I totally, I have that skill set. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, you have an interest in NASA and science fiction, and naturally, there's opportunities to explore the concepts of how engines work.
right,
And
yeah.
so to me, it makes total sense.
It is. I actually, ironically, had said this earlier today on my show, which was just before this show.
I don't watch it.
I like anything. I know. I like anything that's metal and is a mode of transportation and has a motor of some sort, an engine of some sort. I love big
Rolls out
ships,
unicycles.
and I cannot lie.
Actually, now it doesn't roll out unicycles because there's those single wheel engine powered driven devices that,
Right.
sadly, I think the max weight is like 180. So you and I will never get an
we can't do
opportunity
it.
to ride.
Right.
I would need like 3 of them.
But I mean, like anything that's like that. I like robots. I like steam engines. You know, I mean, it's like I'm fascinated by anything that we humans build. I just find that amazing. But I don't have an interest in bicycles, and I don't seem to have an interest in. I mean, like it's very much something has to be powered in some way, metal and powered. You know. Whoa, those one wheel motor skateboard things.
Yeah, that thing.
I have a feeling that sounds like though Colton would get onto one of those.
They go fast. They
do
20 to 30
they
miles per hour.
really move.
I have a juggler friend back in Kentucky who has one because he knows how to ride an actual unicycle because he practices all these crazy dexterity skills things, which is probably why we're friends. And one of the fun times that I'll never forget was he and I in a park practicing catching raw eggs with a plate. So, because it's an old vaudevillian act, and he likes to tap back into the old things that you don't see anymore. And so you juggle the eggs in the plate, and then eventually you throw the eggs really high and catch the plate, and then as the eggs come down, you catch them without them breaking on the plate.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because you do the swing thing to come in on it. So essentially, you're giving it a soft landing.
Yeah, you're matching its momentum and then decelerating it. But he had one of those things, and that's more how I know about him. And to me, I was thinking they would be great additions to certain cosplays if you did a robot thing or something. So.
Yeah.
But my dad never instilled any kind of. I had no confidence in him as a mechanic.
Right.
So I didn't bother learning anything from him because there are things where I saw him do stuff, and I'm like, that can't be right. He took apart the gear shift, my brother's Gremlin, and put it back together and had parts left over and said, oh, you don't need those, and threw them out. The car
took the gear shift out?
He took the stick shift out of it and did something to it. And I guess after a few months, it like grinded down and died. So I'm like, yeah, this isn't the person I want to learn mechanics from. And this was back before YouTube, so I couldn't just pull out my phone and educate myself on that. And I never had mechanic classes in school, which a lot of high schools did that. But yeah, it's just I do know more than I think I know about cars because I'll hear something like you had said. I wouldn't have picked up on what a torque converter is, but there are things where I can go, oh, that's your alternator, or oh, that's your fan belt.
when you're driving next to that guy and his headlights are going like this, like, yeah, your alternator is about to go.
So we need to make that into a gift. What you just did there, a GIF. Yep. There goes.
What's so funny is everybody's going to totally take that the wrong way, and
I did
take it the wrong way.
I took it the wrong way, and I knew what
absolutely.
Was going on, so.
And headlights are different than blinkers, and this would be even weirder. And you're like, okay, I don't know what you're after now. Yeah,
I see.
I had a visit from George, but then George walked away. I don't know.
George is like,
he does this because it says, right here it says Guy and sometimes George.
Yeah.
And so I was going to have my George moment, but then George went that way.
Yeah.
It is the universal sign for headlights.
It's just not on Earth. Everywhere else it is.
Everywhere else. Yeah. It's one of those. That's one of those. It is for headlights, if you know what I mean. So, yep. I now that we've gone way off target there.
I like that. You leaned over to that side at the same time I looked over, so it's like I was looking at whatever it was you were messing with.
Right. I was just turning up the volume on my speakers because it's hard to hear you.
I do have a thing that it's not important, but that we can talk about
for the remaining 10 minutes.
For the remaining 10 minutes, I just bought some used games from Black and Red, as I often do, and one of them is called Alice is Missing. And
is it missing?
No, it wasn't. They I asked them to hold it for me. I was worried somebody might have bought it, so I was worried Alice is Missing would be missing, but it was there. So the game Alice is Missing wasn't missing.
Oh, that's good.
But it's called a silent role playing game, and what it is you have the game's perfectly timed to 90 minutes, and there's a website you go to have the countdown, and every 10 minutes you have to flip over a card that triggers like an event. But before that, it has like 30 minutes to 45 minutes. It plays like Fiasco because everybody gets a character card and you're that character, and it tells you who you are. It gives you a secret, and it gives you 2 character connectors. Like, I always wanted to be your friend, and I know how you really feel about Alice. And so you pick instead of just left and right, you pick any of the players, 2 different players. So I might pick your character, and it'd be like, I always wanted to be your friend would be one of my connectors to you. And then like to Mariah's character might be, I know how you really feel about Alice would be my thing there. And then I have a secret, as everybody does. Then you get motivation card. They call it something else. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's basically a motivation.
Right.
And it gives you a much sharper character thing. Like you think the worst has possibly happened and you trust nobody. Blame everyone for Alice's missing. Blame everyone for Alice's disappearance. And so that'd be like
this is like Twin Peaks, except like it's like a Twin Peaks role playing game.
And all the characters are high school kids, and the group players decide if they want to decide. They decide how they know each other, but you have to know each other, and you have to have at least liked each other at one point. You no longer have to like each other,
right?
But there's a reason why I would still be included in the friend group. It could be one of those things, and this is very real to life. It could be like, well, yeah, we were friends in high school, but then he became a Republican or something, so we don't like him anymore. But he's still part of our friend group. But in this, everybody's in high school, and location cards and suspect cards are getting flipped over as timers go off, and they usually have directions as what happens next. The gameplay is done entirely by text, so everybody has to have a phone. So the idea is that we're all texting each other, trying to figure out where Alice went, playing our characters and clues, and it's done by group text, and you can individually text. So my character could text your character and say, I think Mariah's character killed Alice and hid the body. So we have to figure out where it is. So it's so you have.
Does it have the clue aspect? I mean, is there some function that says we know what happened to Alice, or is this just we just keep playing?
At the end, you find out what happened.
Okay, and is it random? Is it different every time?
It's random.
Nice.
That's my only complaint about it is from what I've seen, you don't find out who it is until the end, which means who it could be doesn't necessarily have any. There's really no way you could have predicted who it was because it is random, but it's up to the group as storytellers to really connect it together in the end. And it's
like
it
Clue with a nice twist.
Yeah, and there's a facilitator who basically they kind of run the game, but that's just so there's one person in charge of doing stuff.
Right.
But they always play the same character who their thing is they were out of town for they moved out of town because their parents divorced, and now they're back in town for break, and they're the one who discovered Alice is missing, and they're the one who sends out the initial text to everybody. It's like, hey, has anybody seen Alice? But it has all these warnings on it because it says, this can go to dark places because we're talking about a female who's missing. And usually that ties into some type of crime of violence, could tie into drugs, could tie into death, and tie into total loss of agency for that character. So it's...
Does somebody play Alice?
No, Alice is not played. But it's still... It
Laura
has...
Palmer. She's totally a Laura Palmer.
Exactly. She's a Laura Palmer of the thing. It has all of these trigger warnings, and it even introduces X cards, which we knew about. An X card is a card you have at a role-playing table, which is really good for a group of role players that don't know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's like
starts hitting on explain what an X card is, because I don't know if... I mean, you and I know about it, but...
Yeah, I'm about to... That's where I was saying. Okay. X card is can be a physical card that if Guy and I did not know each other, and we're role players sitting at a table at a convention playing a role-playing game, and Guy's character starts hitting on my character, I can play the X card and basically say I'm not comfortable as a player exploring that concept.
Right.
Which really I would just flirt back with you in a role. But I'm hypothetically...
In real life, you and I have done wild stuff.
In real life, our characters have already been shipped. Yeah. But it gives you an opportunity to do that, or like if you weren't expecting a horror game and the person starts going into graphic details of like a murder scene, you could drop the X card, because if that disturbs you or bothers you, and that's not an aspect you want to play in the game. Right. So that's an X card. An X card just says, nope, we're not doing that.
Right. Right. Well, and that's an important thing. Like,
it is.
My wife is not very big on the graphic stuff. Mm-mm. As soon as it gets squishy noises, she's out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the examples they give is spiders. If somebody's like arachnophobic, and we wouldn't have a wall of cockroaches in our story, for your sake.
That's about the time where I drop the X card right there.
Yeah, they introduced two other aspects, which is really interesting to me, that I hadn't heard of, called line, Line, and veil, like Veil, that you pull down over your face. Line would be, we're not going to cross this line. And so this is a pre-X card thing. So you could say ahead of time. Yeah, like, we're not going to talk about cockroaches at all. So that's a line. Yeah. Veil would mean, well, you can have cockroaches in the story, but don't linger on them and like give details of how they scurry and everything. But they can be there.
Probably is really what it would be with me, is
yes.
Veil.
Yeah, you'd have a veil on it.
Yeah,
because just the concept.
You mentioned cockroaches. We could talk about cockroaches, but let's not go into too much detail because it will freak me out at some point.
Whereas, like with Mariah, we would have a veil on gore. It's like you could say that they're body parts, but don't go into details type things. So,
and the squishy noises, squish.
But I thought it was a really interesting concept of how it really takes into consideration the player's mental health and well-being, and them actually having a fun time at the game. But I'm looking forward to playing. The only thing I'm sad about is because I'd heard a bit about it. I'd heard that it's a role-playing game you play over text. So I made the mistake of assuming we could play anywhere. You could play from your house, I could play from here. But because there's cards involved and such, we kind of do need to physically be in the same room together to do the card flipping and stuff. Unless if we come up with our own online version, like if we scan them. I was thinking if we scan the cards, the facilitator might be able to just text like the cards to them. Like, we'll just name the files random names.
Or you can just take a picture with your phone.
Well, yeah, but the facilitator shouldn't see certain cards. So certain cards are privy only to the player. Right. So if we have files of them and then randomize the names and just have them in their categories, then I could randomly grab one of them and then text it to you and then move it into another folder so that I know for this game we've used it. But yeah, it sounds fascinating, since we have our friend Alex who's huge into Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like it. Great Twin Peaks-esque.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things where that I really would like to see the company come out with expansions to it, because they could add more characters to it, more locations, more motivations. and then you could customize it more. So you could do an adult version, not adult as an X-rated, but adult as in the characters can no longer can play grown-ups instead of high school kids. So you could have somebody as the FBI agent who's coming to town to investigate it, and then the crazy woman who always carries a log.
Right. And the crazy woman has mini cats.
Yep, as weapons.
All
right. Well,
I drew that card.
So with this new system we have, you can just tell it to fire this off again at 8 o'clock, right?
Yeah, I can. But it's going to fire off to the 2 spots that it went to this time, which was Geek Tank or to Facebook, because I don't have YouTube's connections yet. Mm-hmm. So after this, I'm going for a walk with Alex. Speaking of Alex, so I can't actually hang out with you after the show today. But we could probably get together later on, like this evening or whatever. And then all I really need is for you and I to get on here like this and not broadcast, but just get in here. And then you and I can sit there and dink with the system. And then if I don't have the passwords, you have the passwords, sort of thing.
Right.
And then hook up Twitch and hook up YouTube and hook up. We do have a Twitter account, don't we?
Yes. We just never
hook up Twitter. And then once those are all hooked up, then we can just have it switch back and forth between Guy's setup and Geek Tank's setup every time.
The problem is we don't have younger siblings that we could put in charge of handling our social media accounts.
Right. So you and I have to sit here and be old people and hammer on it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas
our Twitter's still flashing 12 o'clock.
Right. Our Twitter is still. But if we're broadcasting on it every Monday, that at least helps.
Yeah.
What I really want, and I need somebody to figure out how to do this, right? That's what Emily and Chelsea were supposed to do, but Emily and Chelsea are busy, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What I really need, and I need this for everything, is one thing that's connected to everything that brings in all of their feeds into one unit. So that all I have to do is open the blah app and I can see that Brent has replied to my Facebook post on X and Colton has replied to my Twitch stream on Y.
There's got to be something like that.
I know, because right now I just have to keep opening and closing apps all over the place and I forget. Like my Instagram, I keep forgetting it, and that's my bread and butter. It's
as an artist, you should be tossing art on there all the time.
I keep forgetting to get into Instagram, and so my Instagram goes dead, and nobody replies to anything on Instagram because they know I won't reply to it. So, Brent has said a couple of things on Instagram, and 3 weeks later, I'm like, "Oh, that was good, Brent." And I'm like, I feel bad because Brent's said something, and I'm, I should reply to Brent. And then I don't, and I keep forgetting. And so, yeah, there needs to be a thing that consolidates all of you totally do. And I think you're one of 2 people who ever comment on my stuff, because I think you 2 are just determined, which is good. Whereas me, I'm just never. And it really irritates me because I know that there is interaction that needs to be done everywhere. And the problem is, of course, if anybody does it, it's going to be 20% ads. So I'll get ad, and then I'll get Brent has posted, and it's going to be like Facebook. Somebody will finally get to this thing, and they'll make this app, and then they have to make money off of it. So it'll have an ad for every, and I'll think, what? This bra company has replied to me. I don't know why I get bra ads. We were just talking about that earlier today. I think that my Facebook thinks that I'm Mariah. I'm not sure.
I get stuff. Inappropriate manga ads, and I don't even look at inappropriate manga. So
right, I get those too.
It's has Kevin been using my computer?
Right. Well, that was what I was thinking at first too. I was like, you're good at replying. I was thinking that too, that something, but I think really what it is that they're just targeting anybody who is interested in anime or manga. And so we've got an interest in one of those 2 somewhere, and it's hit us up with that. And now they're like, aha, so we'll send hentai and ecchi manga to you, even though neither you nor I are interested in hentai or ecchi. Oh well.
Yeah, I like Junji Ito is one which is the horror manga author. Yeah. So that's which is totally different from the stuff that Kevin looks at.
Right. Now, Junji Ito is like, I actually can respect the work. It creeps me out, and that makes me impressed.
Yeah, he's really tapped into the psychology of drawing disturbing images without them like out of the box thinking disturbing images, not like what you would normally expect to see as a
it's not like exploded people or something. Because there's a certain amount of violence that has been in manga forever that you just kind of get used to, especially if you read manga like Gundam Battle Angel. I mean, people get completely and totally splashed into little teeny pieces all over the place. It happens all the time. So, well, anyway, speaking of the aforementioned Alex and stuff, I'm supposed to meet him in the park in just a few minutes so we can do our walk. So,
so slightly shorter, which is fine because we got a late start.
We got a late start, but we this is also the first time we tried the handoff thing between my show and Geek Tank. I did set up my Alexa to warn me that I only had like 10 minutes left of my show. And then it says, say goodnight, Gracie, at some point in time to remind me that it's time for me to actually roll the end credits on my show.
Yeah, once we get our rhythm, and if depending on how it's set up, maybe Colton. I can start it. But thanks, Colton, for joining us.
We'll have to try that. We'll have to see what happens if you bring up Restream.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
Or what happens if you get in here? Because the link is permanent. So
if you got dropped, it would still be here.
Yeah, there have been a couple of times where I've started my show and Pepper was already here, hanging out, waiting. So does it work? I don't know.
Okay.
So I would love to see what would happen if you came in here while I was in show, or would you just show up in my show? Which is also that is also, by the way, totally acceptable if you wanted to just pop in the last 15 minutes of my show while I'm drawing and have coffee with me, so to speak.
Just sit here and distract you.
Yeah. Well, Colton and I usually just sit there and just draw, and I just bring you in.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you want to just come into my show and just start chatting with me, as long as you don't, as long as I can still do my drawing that my work for the day, I don't care.
That'll be my thing. Will be trying to find ways to mess you up.
Right? Exactly. No, don't draw that line. Draw that line. You drew it wrong.
Well, say hi to Alex for me.
Okay.
Right.
I will. Paint on the show. Yeah. Well, actually, that's not a bad idea, is for you to come onto the show and paint minis. I don't see any reason why you can't.
Well, with my new setup, like my miniature painting station's right behind me.
Yep.
So I just got to get stuff more organized. But but yeah.
He means the right layer is what he means.
Okay.
So, because that's a joke in my show.
Okay.
I'm always on the wrong layer in my show. Well, I'm assuming that's what he means. I mean, it could be the right lawyer, but the only lawyer we know is Chelsea's boyfriend. So there's that. So,
and Matt Murdock, the Daredevil.
Right. So there's that.
All right.
Okay. Well, then I'm gonna. All my lights just changed, which means that we've got to go. So our time is up for the day.
Thanks for good.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Dustin, Colton, and Brent, who were here today.
And for those of you who didn't say anything but are watching, thank you.
Yep. Thank you for joining us, even though we were only on one of our main streams. So we'll figure that out. And then you and I can figure out how to do this for broadcast if you're watching us at 8:00 tonight. And that'll be cool too. And we'll try to join you at that point, but I'm not sure how the feedy thingy will work. It'll probably just say what we said during the show. So we may have to do a recorded earlier sort of aspect.
Well, this feedy thing will still be here.
Yeah.
There'll be a new feedy thing that won't be on the show.
Right, exactly. So we'll have to figure out how to run that one. Well, anyway, we'll figure it out. Anyway, so that's all the time we have for today. And I've been Guy.
I've been Troy.
And this is Geek Tank.